Hello and welcome to another episode of My Energy Story. I'm Jennifer, and with me today I have Grace Henry. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you for allowing us to pray a little bit into your life. What part of the world are you joining us from?
Right now, I'm in Oxford. There's a bit of a lockdown at the moment, but thankfully education is exempt. So I have some freedom to go outside and continue my studies here. And I'm in the middle of studying a Master of Energy Systems.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. By the way, how is the lockdown for you? Because we all went through one phase, and then I call it level 2 for you guys in the UK. How is that for you now?
Yeah, well, I'm very lucky because this year I've been in Australia and they're doing really well with coronavirus. So I feel like I haven't really had a proper lockdown. So I'm going into this lockdown maybe a little fresher than some of my friends who are a bit fatigued from lockdown. But yeah, like I said, with study, I'm able to keep pretty busy. So it's not too bad.
All right, then. Thank you for that. We'll get to see how you get to grow with this and see if people's understanding of COVID is the same way. You read about it, but then you don't have personal experiences. It's a little bit difficult for you to relate, but now that you're going into it yourself, it's like, okay, let's just see if everything we get to hear or what they get to say is exactly what it is. So let's just see how far that is.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this with me again. First off, I always like to ask the very first questions, which is, when you were a kid, did you see yourself in energy? What was when they always ask, when I grow up, I want to be this. So what was it for you?
Yeah, there's absolutely no way I was going to become a chemical engineer or work in the energy industry. I think even when I started chemical engineering, I couldn't see myself being an engineer because I just thought, what on earth do they even do? I couldn't visualize it. So growing up, I played a lot of soccer and that was my life. I trained every day. I was really fortunate to actually have represented Australia at a junior level. And to get to that level, sports physios helped me, almost every day to get me on the pitch and playing at that level. And I could see how much they helped me and how it was quite a social job. So that's always what I wanted to be. And then actually with soccer, I got to go on a trip to China and I was in year 11 at the time at school. And it was my first time to Asia and it just blew my mind to see the population density, the poor air quality and the demand on natural resources in China. And it's just something that I'd never seen before living in Australia. And then that got me reading and thinking a little bit more. And I realized that as a chemical engineer, I would have a really interesting career where you have a role in making sure that the world's population gets access to energy, water, and food. But at the same time, we do that without destructing the earth like we sort of have been in the past with this unsustainable growth. So yeah, I got into chemical engineering and still it wasn't necessarily that I was going to get into energy. I just knew, something in that sort of sustainability area. And then I actually worked in water desalination in Saudi Arabia when I was at university. And that made me realize that energy is sort of at the crux of everything because this water desalination was really energy intensive. And if you were doing that using fossil fuels, through thermal desalination, you were just creating more and more issues where you had more greenhouse gases, more global warming, and then your water reserves will decrease. So that made me get into energy, and now I'm working in the area and studying in the area, and I really love it. And I can see myself, having a really interesting career in this area.
Yeah, it's good to share that because I think many of us start off and then we tend to beat ourselves about, or we tend to worry so early about, okay, what am I supposed to do here? What am I doing here? Does it make any sense for me? But then some of us are a bit more fortunate enough to realize that super early. While a couple of us, it comes as an accident, I would say, something happens to you, then changes the course of your entire existence and changes your perception rather of what life should be, and maybe it just does in the course of energy. Yeah. And for that reason, I'll jump off onto my next one. So, I mean, that then determined what you would do in your master's, right? For you. Because there are literally almost different options you could have picked, right in the energy space. And then you jumped off from engineering and then you went into the energy system. And I'm like, what's the correlation there really?
Yeah, well, I suppose, you know, and you know how you say sometimes you don't know which path you want to take.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I went down this chemical engineering path, and to be honest, when I was at uni, I hated it. Like, I hated learning about it. I couldn't care if flow through a pipe was, you know, these terms turbulent or laminar, or what the heat transfer coefficient is of, you know, this material. Like, I just couldn't care less. I just wanted to work on these big issues, you know, that I'd seen in China, and the stuff that I was doing at uni. I was just like, this is just too technical. But thankfully, I stuck it out. My older brother is an engineer, and he said, don't be silly, Grace. Like, you'll never do this in your work. You know, just get through it, and then you can do some other interesting things. And then I ended up in a technical job using a lot of that stuff, which was quite ironic. And so then that made me think, actually, maybe a little bit more study, doing this course in energy systems will maybe take me a step back from that technical, and also give me some knowledge in sort of the social and political and environmental aspects of energy systems.
Mm-hmm.
And next year, I'm actually going to follow up this course with a Master of Public Policy, because I think so much of the change that we can create in the energy industry is through policy. And I think I'll really love that, because it will be a step back from technical. You know, I have that technical knowledge, but then how I can apply that to change, I think, is actually through policy. So I think, you know, sometimes you don't really know what direction you're heading in, and you kind of just make it up as you go. But as long as you're open to change and new opportunities, they'll come. Yeah.
You know, I like what you said there in terms of policies. So I'll dial back a little bit and talk about myself. So for me, I'm an economics major, and I did a master's in energy economics, right? But right after graduating from my master's degree, I mean, everything that I get to read, at the grassroots of everything, you get to see that there's some policy, whatever, it's wrapped around the whole thing. And then it's like, why does everything always have to boil down to policy? And then you're now having to look at what policies they are, how you can change them, how long it takes a policy to actually go into functions and everything. And then it made me understand that there's just only so much that we can do. But as long as we continue reading, as long as we continue educating ourselves, to be very honest, we're just going to keep doing more, and then we're just going to keep opening spaces for us. I mean, something that I would actually want to add to that is, if you check out the IEA website towards the policy area, that is where you get to see like how many policies countries have actually put out for themselves in this particular sphere. And that was what got me really interested. Like, okay, these are the policies countries are taking. These are the movements they are making to make sure that their economy, their countries are politically stable enough to actually accommodate clean energy and whatnot. So for that reason, I appreciate. Wait, hold on. Let me take it back. Does this mean that right after your master's, you're going to do another master's again?
Yeah, crazy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but I'm actually really, really fortunate to be here on a scholarship. So I'm here on a Rhodes Scholarship, and they give 2 years of funding. So yeah, you know, like, I think while that opportunity is there, you've got to take it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, COVID might be in a little bit of a better situation, you know, in a year's time, and I'll get to have some fun at uni as well, rather than just study in lockdown.
I mean, allow me to say congratulations for that, first of all.
Thank you.
Because I would dial it down to, I mean, I was going through your Instagram handles and everything. And by the way, I was going to ask a question, right? So what was the inspiration for that? I just saw it as I mean, like I said earlier on, please, like we just want to post about the finer things of life. Well, I'm going on a vacation here, I'm going on a vacation there, but just a handful of us are just really, really into posting about like the real issues of life, like what is happening here, how much emissions are we putting out. And I'll come back to something later, but I'll talk about this now. Like, so what inspired you to push out this message using a platform which you could have used to showcase how lovely Australia is, how really chill London really is? Like, why did you decide to use that platform to actually create a voice for climate change and sustainability and sustainable energy?
Yeah, well, I was living in Perth this year and I was really involved in the energy community there. I was a secretary of a women in energy group and I was putting a lot of time and effort into that group. And then obviously moving to Oxford, I left that group and I thought, I just have this burning desire to, to make change in this area, and was sort of brainstorming, how am I going to do this? And I realized that, it's completely free and accessible for me to set up this Instagram account. And, a lot of young people are on Instagram. And even if I just get a few followers, I just thought I'm just going to start small and see where this goes. But even if I just get a few followers and I can share some information and they can learn about this, they can start discussions with their friends, their families, maybe even their local politicians, then I think I'm making, a small difference. And I think Instagram is really nice because when you think of the energy challenges we face, they're really difficult to visualize. When you think of the challenges we face on waste, we can really visualize that. We can see the waste. We can see the turtles eating the plastic bags. We can see our waste each week in our bins. And if we make changes, we can see that reduce. And you get this visual feedback. Whereas in the energy industry, we don't get that. We don't actually see CO2. And when someone tells me, this is 1 megawatt or this is 1 ton of CO2, what does that mean? They're just numbers, And so I just thought, why don't I set up this page where I can try and just make these visual posts so people can sort of understand it a bit more clearly and, start discussions, start the dialogue, maybe, make some changes in their lives. Yeah, so I just thought, there's nothing to lose. Setting up this page is only going to cost me some time and some time doing something that I love. So yeah, I just thought if I can help even just a few people put those numbers into something that they can visualize or something that they can connect with, maybe make some changes, start some discussions with maybe their friends, family, even local politicians, then I think it's a worthwhile thing to do. And I think the voice of young people is so important in this energy transition, and the voice of everyone, really. Yeah. And for me, Instagram was just a platform where I could get that out.
I mean, that is where I found you. So definitely. So you are making a change and we're hearing you. So, so big on that. Something interesting that I want to know, and I think that maybe those that will be listening to this might also want to know is, so you said you worked at a nuclear reactor plant, right? You mentioned rather.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how was working there? What was it like? So we got to hear that, nuclear is like, I mean, this is like the very old stories, about nuclear energy. As aside what we know about it now, we know it's the cleanest form, but then old stories we've heard have contradicted that. So it's like, so me hearing from you now is pretty much going to sound like has some form of solid bias that we get to run with.
Yeah, so this was really interesting. Australia actually has regulations where nuclear power generation is not allowed. So nuclear energy itself isn't allowed. So I worked at the only nuclear plant in Australia. And that plant is purely used for research and medical purposes. And so I got to learn all about how nuclear is still nuclear energy, how nuclear energy works and the safety and that sort of thing. But any energy that was generated from this facility in the form of heat wasn't actually able to be used. So look, I think it is a really interesting area. I think personally working there, I think it was very, very safe with the regulations that they had, but that's not consistent across all countries and all facilities. You know, those standards might vary a little bit, but in Australia, whenever I was there, I didn't ever worry about safety. But it did get me exposed to, you know, that when we talk about nuclear, it's not just a technical debate on, you know, is it clean energy or is it not? It's also very much a social and political debate. And in Australia, the politicians just don't want to go there. It's easier just to ignore it and not go there. And then in terms of social, you know, I think a lot of people are supportive of it, but they're not supportive of it if it's going to be near their home, you know, or if the waste is going to be disposed of, you know, near their community. And so I think, personally, I think if you look at the rate of developments that are happening in new technologies,
Yeah.
and the time it takes to build new nuclear power plants, I think we're probably past that. We can probably just go straight to these new technologies. But I think where there are existing nuclear plants, like in France and so forth, you know, we should be continuing to use them and use them safely because they are a really clean source of energy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's not just nuclear, right? I feel like, so I always say something, and that is every single thing that we do, there's some form of energy that we burn, right? And one of the overlooked part of it is in transportation. And in transportation, the heaviest is air transportation, right? And you've highlighted that, we've stressed on it a lot more, right? And then it made me want to even open the floor to talk about it here with you, because it's like, I understand that a lot of us want to have the good things of life. We want to fly to some private island so we can have some fun, but then we forget the fact that these engines burn and then they emit so much. So now you having to share, I mean, first question is, what actually pushed you to even talk about it in the very first place?
Yeah, well, I'll be the first to admit that my CO2 emissions from aviation are probably through the roof compared to the world average, which, you know, is not good at all. But, you know, at the same time, I think we can gain so much from travel. You know, I spoke about before how going to China opened up my eyes to these challenges we were facing. And, you know, the flight that I took over to Oxford, you know, I think that is worth the emissions at the moment with the return that I'm getting from that. As long as you're aware that, you know, these flights come with emissions, and then maybe you make some adjustments in your lifestyle, or you buy some offsets or so forth. But if we don't know about it and we can't put it into relative terms of how much these emissions are, then you're not even in the situation to make those decisions. So yeah, I think that's why I started it, because you know, people know it's a lot, but how much exactly, you know, I'm able to put into my Instagram and, you know, have it there so people can visualize and it can resonate with them. So the next time they're taking a flight, they can really evaluate if that flight's worth it or not, and, you know, will they buy some offsets or not.
I mean, that's what we're talking about it, because it was on your Instagram that I saw it and I thought, oh, definitely, I have to share it on here. And then you mentioned buying offsets. So how is that possible?
Well, there's a lot of companies out there where, you know, they might plant trees, or they might do some sort of soil carbon capture, or so forth. So you can purchase it with them, or you might be able to purchase it with the airline. I think, like anything with energy, you know, it's not just a simple solution, because if we just rely on offsets, then that's not the answer, you know, because you can end up getting biodiversity loss because companies are just planting, you know, one type of tree in places. You know, if everyone relied on offsets, there wouldn't be enough, you know, area in the world for these offsets. And and so forth. So again, it's not a simple solution, but maybe in this interim while we're waiting for alternative fuels and so forth, it's something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot for that. And I might, this part, sitting towards the end, I might decide to get a little bit more personal with you because, I mean, it's my energy story at the end of the day. Kicking that right off, I want to ask, rather, I want to know, I mean, all through the course of your study, from your undergrad and to your master's, there are definitely some challenges that you must have gone through. I mean, you even acknowledging the fact that you just never even liked the first course you did in the very first, like chemical engineering. So it's like, how were you able to like continue to the very end? Because you hear people that take courses, but they don't like them, but they end up dropping them. But you could have had that chance to do that. So why didn't you then drop it?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I was so close to dropping out and moving back to physiotherapy that, you know, I always pictured myself doing as a kid. And I was so lucky that my older brother is an engineer. And he was able to, you know, really, he was like an unofficial mentor to me. He was able to tell me, don't be silly, Grace, you know. And he actually gave me really good advice that what you do at university is really sometimes very different to what you do in the workforce. And so his advice was just go out there and do as many internships as you can. And then you'll realize, you know, what it's really like, rather than just turning up to a lecture and listening to some theoretical stuff. So I think that would be my advice, really just try and get out there, do some internships. It can be really hard to get sometimes, but, you know, just when you ask someone, the worst they can say is no. You know, even if you ask them, can I have a tour of your plant? Can I come and, you know, shadow someone for a week? Or can I do a project? You know, can I do my thesis for you? Or something to get out there in the workforce and just see what it's like. And that's what I did. And I realized that actually I love it. That as an engineer, every day something's different. The challenges you face are really interesting. And I'm not actually sitting down with a pen and paper doing, you know, integration and things like that, you know. So, and also like there's many different areas. So if you have one bad internship, that's not the end of the world. That means that you're closer to finding out what you like, because you can rule out that area that you didn't like. So I think the way my advice for students would be, you know, make sure you have some sort of support, whether that's family or friends or, you know, someone that can give you advice like my brother did. And then also just try and get out there and see what it's like in the real world, rather than what you're doing just being taught at uni.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for me too, because I feel like most of the time we don't even stress how important it is to actually have internships, because I feel like they are an exposure to the workforce. Because I mean, you won't get as much load as you would get when you're actually in the job itself. But being in an internship, you get to see what it feels like, and to an extent, it then also starts to give. You start having thoughts, or that it starts to shape the direction of what exactly you want to do. Because it's like you taste this, it's like, nah, I don't like the taste of this. I can do something else. You get so something like that. Yeah. So
yeah, it's like try before you buy, or try before you commit. You know, you've got nothing to lose. Just go out there and give it a go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, thank you very much for this. And I mean, like I still sit back and still think, like, after this, you actually want to go for another master's, like I've got for you for that. So I mean, for that, it just goes to show that we can literally do almost anything that we want to do. And as much as our difficulties are different, they're always quite similar in almost everything, because it's not easy to get internships, to be very, very serious about that. So it's about we having to stamp your feet, ask for what you want. You don't know, but then you don't get to like settle on the no. I mean, lastly, before you go, I'll ask you this last question. How do you then handle rejections? Have you been rejected before? That's the very first question.
Yeah, definitely. You know, like for internships, sometimes I'll be rejected just from some silly tests, you know, some psychometric tests, and it's like, does this make me a bad engineer? Like, I hope not. You know, like, happens all the time. And you know, sometimes, you know, I said before, the worst that can happen is someone can say no, or a company can say no, and maybe I've pushed that a little bit, you know, and I have had people come back and say, oh, look, I'm sorry, I can't. And you know, I think what you need to do is just not take that personally and just move on. Yeah, I think the worst you can do is be caught up in rejection. And you know, they're not rejecting you as a person, they're rejecting you because of the circumstances of the situation, and so forth. And yeah, I think yeah, I got advice from my auntie that the worst someone can say is no. And I think, you know, if you take that through life, it's a good way to live. Yeah.
I mean, and something someone also told me was, when you get to hear a no, sometimes you should also ask for feedback. Okay, why? Thank you for telling me no, but then can I get a reason to why this is like? I appreciate your feedback. Can you shed more light on what I could have done better to have landed this? So that kind of like changes your idea of how to approach things from a better point of view. So thank you very much for doing this with us. You have, I mean, you shared quite really insightful things, and I definitely hope that when this gets published, that for everyone that gets to watch this, even those that get to even edit, would know. Come on, like, most important part of it is you get to fly. You should be quite conscious of how much you get to emit when you fly.
Yes.
Yeah, so for that reason, I say thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. Enjoy your week, enjoy your weekend, and congratulations for your second degree. I know you haven't gotten it yet, but I'm super rooting for you.
No, still needs to pass.
Come on,
Thank
you
you
will
so
pass.
much, Jennifer.
All right, then. Have a good day then.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.